Can an organism live without a brain? That's a good question. Most of us, we think of a brain as pretty central to being alive. When we imagine living things, especially animals, we picture them thinking, moving, reacting. And for that, we usually assume a brain is needed, but that's really only part of the story. The world of living things is much, much bigger than just us and the animals we see around us every day. And when you look at that wider world, you quickly see that a brain, at least in the way we understand it, is not a must-have for life. Not at all. What even is a brain when you get down to it? For us, for a dog, for a bird, it's like the command center. It takes in all the information from our senses, it figures out what it means, it sends out orders to our muscles, it lets us learn, remember, feel things. It's a super complex machine that makes sense of the world and helps us act in it. It's what makes us, well, us. But many, many living things don't have anything like that. And they're doing just fine. They're eating, growing, moving, reproducing, and reacting to their environment without a central processing unit. They find ways to survive and thrive. Think about the smallest living things first. The microscopic ones, we're talking about bacteria. You can't see them without a microscope. They're everywhere, in your gut, on your skin, in the soil, in the air. Billions of them. They are living organisms, they eat, they grow, they divide, they react to chemicals around them. They move towards food or away from poisons, they sense their surroundings, and they definitely don't have a brain. They don't even have different organs, they are just one single cell. All the work of living happens within that one tiny cell. And there are other single-celled creatures, like amoebas or paramecia, and amoeba is like a blob. It moves by stretching out parts of its body and then flowing into them. It engulfs food. It avoids bad stuff. It reproduces by splitting in half. No brain there, no nervous system at all. It just works on a chemical level. Certain chemicals tell it to move one way, others to move another. It's like a very simple, direct response system built right into its cell machinery. A paramecium is another one. It's shaped like a slipper, covered in tiny hairs called cilia. Those cilia beat in a coordinated way, pushing the paramecium through the water. It has a little groove on its side for sweeping in food. It has a way to get rid of excess water. It can back up and turn around if it bumps into something. It's much more organized than an amoeba, but still, it's just one cell, or no brain. Its movements and reactions are all thanks to the way its cell is structured and the chemical signals within it. So, right there, billions of living things show us that a brain isn't needed for life. But maybe you're thinking, okay, those are just single cells. What about bigger stuff? What about things we can actually see? Well, let's talk about plants. You see plants every day. Trees, flowers, grass, vegetables. Are they alive? Absolutely. They grow, they take in nutrients, they reproduce, they respond to their environment. A plant will grow towards the light. Right? That's called phototropism. Its roots will grow down, following gravity and seeking water. That's gravitropism and hydrotropism. Some plants, like a Venus flytrap, can even snap shut when an insect touches them. A mimosa plant will fold its leaves if you touch it. Do plants have brains? No, not even a little bit. They don't have nerves, they don't have muscles. They communicate and coordinate their growth and responses using chemical signals like hormones. These hormones travel through the plant, telling different parts what to do. They can sense light, temperature, touch, chemicals in the soil, even insect attacks. And they react in complex ways. They can send warning signals to other parts of the plant, or even to neighboring plants if they are being eaten. They can produce chemicals to deter predators. They can change their growth patterns. Think about a climbing plant like ivy. It doesn't have a brain to decide to climb. It has specialized cells that sense touch. When a tendril touches something solid, those cells trigger a growth response that makes a tendril curl around the object. It's a built-in program, a series of chemical reactions, not a thought process. So, plants are a huge, diverse group of living organisms, and none of them have brains. They are incredibly successful too, forming the base of most food chains on Earth. Now, what about animals? Even among animals, brains are not universal. Let's start with one of the simplest animals out there, the sponge. Sponges are found in oceans all over the world. They look a bit like plants, but they are definitely animals. They attach themselves to rocks or coral. They filter water, pulling out tiny bits of food. The water flows in through tiny pores and out through a larger opening. This flow is created by specialized cells with flagella, which are like little whips. Sponges don't have organs, they don't have true tissues in the way most animals do, and critically, they have no nervous system at all. No nerves, no brain, no nerve net. Nothing. They can contract their whole body very slowly, sometimes in response to irritation or bad water conditions, but they do this without any central command. Their cells somehow manage to coordinate themselves at a very basic level. Each cell pretty much acts on its own, but together they make up a functioning organism. So, sponges are alive, they reproduce, they feed, they react, and they do it all without a single nerve cell. They are a clear example of an animal living without a brain. Let's move up a tiny step in complexity. Think about jellyfish. Jellyfish are beautiful, often mesmerizing creatures. They drift through the water, pulsing their bell to move. They have stinging tentacles to catch food. They can sense light and touch. They can even navigate somewhat. Do jellyfish have a brain? No. They don't have a centralized brain like we do. What they have is called a nerve net. Imagine a net spread out under their skin, all over their body. It's a diffuse network of nerve cells. There isn't one main hub. Signals can travel in many directions through this net. When one part of the net is stimulated, the signal spreads, causing a general reaction. For example, if you gently touch a jellyfish's bell, the nerve net can coordinate the muscle cells around the bell to contract, causing the jellyfish to pulse. It's a very simple, direct reflex. It doesn't involve complex thought or planning. It just happens. It's effective enough for their lifestyle of drifting and catching prey. They don't need a brain to hunt, eat, or avoid danger. The nerve net takes care of those basic needs. And there are other creatures like sea anemones and corals, which are related to jellyfish. They also have nerve nets. They are fixed in place, but they can sting prey, retract their tentacles, and respond to their environment. Again, no brain needed for these successful life forms. What about something like a starfish? Starfish, or sea stars, are fascinating animals. They have multiple arms, usually 5, but sometimes more. They move slowly using hundreds of tiny tube feet on their underside. They can open clams and mussels. They can regenerate lost arms. A starfish has a nervous system, but it's very different from ours. It doesn't have a brain. Instead, it has a nerve ring in its central body, and then a nerve cord running down each arm. These nerves connect, but there isn't a single dominant processing center. Each arm can actually act somewhat independently. If you cut off a starfish's arm and it has enough of the central disc with it, that arm can sometimes even regenerate into a whole new starfish. This decentralized system allows them to coordinate their many tube feet to move, or to grip a prey item. The signals pass around the nerve ring and down the arms. It's a more complex system than a nerve net, but still no brain. No one part is in charge of everything. It's a distributed control system, a bit like how a crowd of people might move together without one person giving all the orders. So, we've seen single-celled organisms, plants, sponges, jellyfish, and starfish all living full, active lives without brains. This tells us a lot about what life is and what it isn't. What functions do we usually think brains are for, and how do these brainless creatures manage them? Bacteria and amoebas have chemical receptors on their cell surface. They can smell food or taste chemicals. Plants have photoreceptors that sense light direction and intensity. They have cells that sense touch or gravity. And jellyfish have light-sensing organs called ocelli, which are like very simple eyes that can tell light from dark. They also have balance organs. Starfish have light-sensitive spots at the tip of each arm. They can tell if it's light or dark, which is enough for them to find shelter or avoid open areas. All these forms of sensing are done without a brain to interpret complex images or sounds. They are direct, built-in responses. 2. Movement. We use our muscles, controlled by our brain. Bacteria use flagella, tiny whip-like tails. Amoebas flow like blobs. Paramecia use cilia, tiny hairs. Plants don't. Move in the same way, but they grow and turn. Some, like the Venus flytrap, have very fast turgor movements, changes in water pressure that act like muscles. Sponges create water currents using flagella. Jellyfish pulse their bells with simple muscle like cells controlled by their nerve net. Starfish use their tube feet, powered by a water vascular system with coordination from their decentralized nervous system. Again, no brain needed to get around or change shape. 3. Feeding. We use our hands, our mouth, our brain to strategize. Bacteria absorb nutrients directly through their cell walls. Amoebas engulf food. Plants make their own food through photosynthesis. They also absorb nutrients from the soil through their roots. Sponges filter microscopic food particles from water. Jellyfish sting prey with nematocysts on their tentacles and then bring the food to their mouth. Starfish pry open shells or sometimes push their stomach out to digest food outside their body. All these methods are effective and happen without a brain. 4. Reproduction. For us, it's a complex social and biological process, often involving brain activity. Many of these organisms reproduce very simply. Bacteria just split in two. Amoebas split. Plants reproduce sexually flowers, seeds, or asexually cuttings, runners. Sponges can reproduce sexually by releasing sperm and eggs, or asexually by budding or fragmentation. Or jellyfish have complex life cycles involving different forms and sexual, asexual reproduction. Starfish release sperm and eggs into the water. They can also regenerate from parts. Reproduction is one of the most fundamental aspects of life, and it's handled in countless ways without a brain. And bacteria might swim away from a harmful chemical. Plants produce toxins, grow thorns, or mimic other plants to deter herbivores. The mimosa plant folds its leaves to look less appetizing. Sponges produce chemical compounds that are toxic or repellent to predators. Jellyfish sting. Starfish have tough, spiny skin and can shed an arm to escape. These responses are often reflexes or chemical reactions, not conscious decisions, but they keep the organism safe enough to survive. When a bacteria moves towards sugar, it's deciding to go towards food. When a plant grows towards light, it's deciding to maximize photosynthesis. When a jellyfish pulses its bell, it's deciding to move. These aren't conscious choices. They are programmed responses. It's like a complex machine following its instructions. A thermostat decides to turn on the heat, but it doesn't have a brain. It responds to the temperature. Living things have far more complex response systems built into their very cells and structures. So, if all these things can be done without a brain, why did brains ever evolve? Why do we have them? Brains allow for much more complex behaviors. They allow for faster, more coordinated movements, especially for active predators or prey. Imagine trying to catch a fast-moving fish with just a nerve net or a decentralized system. It would be incredibly hard. A centralized brain allows for rapid processing of lots of information at once, leading to quick and precise actions. Brains also allow for learning and memory. A jellyfish can't learn from its mistakes or remember where the best food was yesterday. A dog, on the other hand, can be trained. It remembers faces, smells, commands. This ability to learn from experience and adapt behavior is a massive advantage in a constantly changing environment. It lets an organism go beyond simple, built-in reflexes. Brains allow for anticipation. We can predict what might happen next. We can plan. We can imagine scenarios. A squirrel buries nuts for winter, anticipating a time of scarcity. That requires a brain capable of complex thought and planning. Brains also enable more sophisticated social interactions. For animals that live in groups, like wolves or humans, a brain helps with communication, understanding social cues, forming bonds, and working together. So, brains are not necessary for life itself, but they are incredibly useful for complex life. They are an evolutionary advantage for organisms that need to move quickly, process a lot of information, learn, remember, plan, and interact in intricate ways with their environment and other members of their species. Life started without brains. The earliest forms of life were just single cells. For billions of years, life on Earth existed and flourished without anything resembling a brain. Even now, most of the living biomass on Earth consists of plants and microorganisms, all brainless. Brains are a relatively recent invention in the grand scheme of evolution, appearing only when multicellular animals started to become more complex and active. The journey from a simple nerve net to a highly complex brain like ours took millions of years, driven by the need to survive and reproduce in increasingly challenging and competitive environments. The development of a brain allowed some lineages of animals to explore new ways of living, to become smarter, faster, and more adaptable. But it's important to remember that this path to complexity, while amazing, is just one path. There are countless other ways to be alive. To look at a tree or a sponge and say they aren't. Really living because they don't have a brain would be a huge misunderstanding of life itself. They are perfectly adapted to their own niches, thriving and reproducing just as successfully as many brain-carrying creatures. So to answer the initial question simply and directly, yes, absolutely. An organism can live without a brain. In fact, most organisms on Earth do. Life is incredibly diverse, resourceful, and capable of finding innumerable ways to exist and flourish, with or without a central command center. Our brain is a marvel, a powerful tool for our specific way of life, but it is not a universal requirement for the miracle of being alive. And it just shows how many different designs nature has come up with to make life work.